It is little known how ardent a civil rights and social justice advocate Albert Einstein actually was. And this was and is largely due to the refusal of mainstream journalism to publicize his strident points of view on the pervasiveness and the popularity of systemic racism in the United States. Einstein was a long-standing friend and comrade of Paul Robeson, who was primarily known for his groundbreaking contributions to music and theater, as well as his advocacy for equality and social justice. I like to mention that he was also an All-American athlete and even played professional football. Einstein and Robeson worked together on the American crusade to end lynching in response to an upsurge in the murders of Black soldiers as they returned home after World War II. I'll also point out that this occurred even more so at the end of World War I. In 1951, during the McCarthy era, when Americans of all stripes were being unjustly blacklisted and accused of belonging to the Communist Party, Einstein offered to appear as a character witness for Professor W.E.B. Du Bois, an unmatched scholar, intellectual, and founder of the NAACP. This courageous act on his part convinced the judge to drop the case. Einstein equated the ghettoization of Jews in Germany and legal apartheid in the United States. He called racism America's worst disease. His essay, which follows, was originally published in the January 1946 issue of Pageant magazine. I believe it should be published again. I am writing as one who has lived among you in America only a little more than 10 years, and I am writing seriously and warningly. Many readers may ask, what right does he have to speak about things that concern us alone and which no newcomer should touch? I do not think such a point of view is justified. One who has grown up in an environment takes much for granted. On the other hand, one who has come to this country as a mature person may have a keen eye for everything peculiar and characteristic. I believe he should speak out freely on what he sees and feels, for by doing so, he may perhaps prove himself useful. What soon makes the new arrival devoted to this country is the democratic trait among the people. I am not thinking here so much of the democratic political constitution of this country, however highly it must be praised. I am thinking of the relationship between individual people and of the attitude they maintain toward one another. In the United States, everyone feels assured of his worth as an individual. No one humbles himself before another person or class. Even the great difference in wealth, the superior power of a few, cannot undermine this healthy self-confidence and natural respect for the dignity of one's fellow man. There is, however, a somber point in the social outlook of Americans. Their sense of equality and human dignity is mainly limited to men of white skins. Even among these, there are prejudices, of which I, as a Jew, am clearly conscious. But they are unimportant in comparison with the attitudes of the whites towards their fellow citizens of darker complexion, particularly towards Negroes. The more I feel an American, the more this situation pains me. I can escape the feeling of complicity if it only means by speaking out. Many a sincere person will answer, our attitude towards Negroes is the result of unfavorable experiences which we have had by living side by side with Negroes in this country. They are not our equals in intelligence, sense of responsibility, reliability. I am firmly convinced that whoever believes this suffers from a fatal misconception. Your ancestors dragged these Black people from their homes by force, and in the white man's quest for wealth and an easy life, they have been ruthlessly suppressed and exploited, degraded into slavery. The modern prejudice against Negroes is the result of the desire to maintain this unworthy condition. The ancient Greeks also had slaves. They were not Negroes, but white men who had been taken captive in war. There could be no talk of racial differences. And yet, Aristotle, one of the great Greek philosophers, declared slaves inferior beings who were justly subdued and deprived of their liberty. It is clear that he was enmeshed in a traditional prejudice from which, despite his extraordinary intellect, he could not free himself. A large part of our attitude towards things is conditioned by opinions and emotions which we unconsciously absorb as children from our environment. In other words, it is tradition, besides inherited aptitudes and qualities, which makes us what we are. We but rarely reflect how relatively small, as compared with the powerful influence of tradition, is the influence of our conscious thought upon our conduct and convictions. It would be foolish to despise tradition, but with our growing self-consciousness and increasing intelligence, we must begin to control tradition and assume a critical attitude towards it, if human relations are ever to change for the better. We must try to recognize what in our accepted tradition is damaging to our fate and dignity, and shape our lives accordingly. I believe that whoever tries to think things through honestly will soon recognize how unworthy and even fatal is the traditional bias against Negroes. What, however, can the man of goodwill do to combat this deeply rooted prejudice? He must have the courage to set an example by word and deed, and must watch lest his children become influenced by this racial bias. I do not believe there is a way in which this deeply entrenched evil can be quickly healed. But until this goal is reached, there is no greater satisfaction for a just and well-meaning person than the knowledge that he has devoted his best energies to the service of the great cause.